Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for December the 11th. Today we are reading together Psalm 144. The 144th Psalm has been given the title in my Bible, A King's Prayer, which means that it makes sense for this to fit into the category of a royal psalm. It is written from the perspective of David. The text tells us that this is of David. He speaks of himself as the king. He speaks of himself in the kingly role. So again, just makes sense for us to categorize this in the royal psalm category. And there also could be some elements of praise included as well. Again, not all these psalms fit neatly into a single category. Be that as it may, let me get the text up on the screen and we'll read along together here and pay attention. See if you might recognize this psalm, some of the words of this psalm from another psalm that we've read throughout the Psalter. And in fairness, probably pretty hard to, it might not be that easy to remember since we read this psalm like in January. um, Having said that, let's read together here Psalm 144, beginning verse number 1. Psalm 144, verse number 1. Blessed be Yahweh my rock, who trains my hands for battle and my fingers for warfare. He is my faithful love and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer. He is my shield, and I take refuge in him. He subdues my people under me. Yahweh, what is a human that you care for him? A son of man that you think of him? A human is like a breath, his days are like a passing shadow. Yahweh, part your heavens and come down. Touch the mountains and they will smoke. Flash your lightning and scatter the foe. Excuse me. Verse number 6. Flash your lightning and scatter the foe. Shoot your arrows and rout them. Reach down from on high. Rescue me from deep water and set me free from the grasp of foreigners whose mouths speak lies, whose right hands are deceptive. God, I will sing a new song to you. I will play on a 10-string harp for you, the one who gives victory to kings, who frees his servant David from the deadly sword. Set me free and rescue me from foreigners, whose mouths speak lies, whose right hands are deceptive. Then our sons will be like plants, nurtured in their youth, our daughters like corner pillars that are carved in the palace style. Our storehouses will be full, supplying all kinds of produce. Our flocks will increase by thousands and tens of thousands in our open fields. Our cattle will be well fed. There will be no breach in the walls, no going into captivity, and no cry of lament in our public squares. Happy are the people with such blessings. Happy are the people whose God is Yahweh. Psalm 144, again, a royal psalm, a psalm of David, referred to as a king's prayer. As we get into the psalm, we'll see this psalm built on the foundation of acknowledgments that David has of Yahweh, who he is. He refers to Yahweh through a number of metaphors here, and each of these metaphors speak to the ability that Yahweh has uniquely to protect David. Blessed be Yahweh, my rock, my faithful love, my fortress, my stronghold, my deliverer, my shield. And then he speaks of seeking refuge in him. Again, each of these things speak of protection. My rock, who trains my hands for battle, my fingers for warfare. The king was the military commander. He was the head of the strength of his nation. And certainly David was known as a mighty warrior, and he recognized that it was Yahweh, his rock, who prepared him to live in this way. And then he speaks of his fortress. He'll make a fortress, a stronghold, a deliverer, a shield. Again, each of these have connotations of being protection for David. And then he also speaks of Yahweh being his faithful love. His faithful love. We often speak of Yahweh having faithful love for humans and for those with whom he has covenant. But now we read David speaking of his faithful love for Yahweh. And this makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense for David to be able to speak of Yahweh in this way, because that word has said that faithful love is a covenant love, and it takes two to be in covenant. So not only does Yahweh have a covenant, faithful, strong, enduring love for David, but David also has that for Yahweh. And he recognizes the fact that Yahweh's love for him is what fills him with confidence that Yahweh will be these things for him, that he will be his rock, his fortress, his stronghold, his deliverer, and his shield, that he would be someone in whom David could take refuge, and that he would subdue. There's a translation variant here, either his own people or other people's, subdues other people's under me. Again, showing the power and strength of David in his position. Only God would do these things for Yahweh. Or excuse me, only God would do these things for David. So David praises and blesses the name of Yahweh, again, with the proper recognition of who he is and what he can and will do for him. But considering that David would, or considering from David's perspective that Yahweh would do these things for him, he is left amazed in verses 3 and 4 that Yahweh would take care of him in this way. David recognizes just how much greater Yahweh is, that he is superior in every way, that whereas men are like a breath, a passing shadow, Yahweh is enduring and everlasting. How could such a great God be so considerate of a human in this way? That is perplexing to David. Yet that is just who this God is, that he is so caring and compassionate for those who he has created, especially for those with whom he has covenant. But then we get to verses 5, 6, 7, and 8. Verses 5 through 8, like I said, might have caught something a little familiar, which I guess, to be fair, the opening that what we just read is also something that should be familiar to us from Psalm number 8, where David again asks the question, what is a human being that you remember him? So that's already something that should be familiar to us. But then verses 5 through 8 also come from a previous psalm, and that's Psalm 18. This again is a psalm of David. And within this particular psalm, there is a historical marker whenever this was written after Yahweh had rescued David from the grasp of all his enemies and from the power of Saul. And within this particular psalm, excuse me, uh, David writes from the perspective that God has done what David is asking him to do in Psalm 144. So chronologically, it would make sense that Psalm 144 would have been written prior to Psalm 18. Remember, the Psalter is not organized in chronological order. But as if we're going to take these two Psalms out individually and say, okay, which one of these will come first? I think it makes most sense that Psalm 144 would have been written first. Because notice this. He makes these requests. Yahweh, part your heavens and come down, touch the mountains, and they will smoke, flash your lightning, and scatter the foe, shoot your arrows, and rout them. Reach down from on high, rescue me from deep water, and set me free from the grasp of foreigners, whose mouths speak lies, whose right hands are deceptive. So think about that. Think about that section, and let's turn back to Psalm 18. Psalm 18, let's see here, and let's begin reading in verse. Let's begin reading verse 13. Yahweh thundered from heaven. The Most High made his voice heard. He shot his arrows and scattered them. He hurled lightning bolts and routed them. The depths of the sea became visible. The foundations of the world were exposed. At your rebuke, Yahweh, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils, he reached down from on high and took hold of me. He pulled me out of deep water. He rescued me from my powerful enemy and for those who hated me, for they were too strong for me. So notice the similarities between these two sections. Again, Psalm 144 being of David, seemingly making the request that these things would happen. And then Psalm 18, again, of David, thanking God that he made these things happen. I don't know if there's a direct correlation between these two psalms. Again, the language is so similar. It seems almost like there is, and I don't know why the organizers of the Psalter would put them in the position that they did and not kind of put them together, but they did. That's fine. But we see that David having this great confidence in Yahweh to make these requests in another psalm praises God for having fulfilled those requests. And what does he say here that he's going to do whenever Yahweh does this? Whenever Yahweh does set him free from the grasp of foreigners, their mouths speak lies, their right hands are deceptive, which later on in verse number 11, the same thing, um, speaks of the foreigners and speaking lies, right hands, all of that. But what happens whenever God does this? Well, verse 9, I will sing a new song to you. That is an echo of Psalm 98 and verse 1. He speaks of singing a new song. And I will play on a 10-string harp for you. Actually, let's go back here. I did not make this connection earlier. Some of the Psalms will speak about the various instruments that are used to worship to these particular Psalms. I was wondering if maybe Psalm 18 had a 10-string harp mentioned there, but it does not, so we can't make that connection. But be that as it may, I will sing a new song to you. I will play on 10-string harp for you. I will worship you is the simple connotation here. Well, what is Psalm 1 what is Psalm 18, not 118? What is Psalm 18? Well, it's for the choir director. It's something that would be used in worship. So, again, making these connections, David makes the request here and says, if you do this, then I will praise you as the one who gives victory to kings, who sets free servant David from the deadly sword. You set me free, or excuse me, set me free and rescue me from foreigners. So that request is made multiple times. Go to Psalm 18. David is thanking God that he did answer his prayers. What a couple of really cool connections there between this psalm here at the end of the Psalter and one up there more toward the beginning of the Psalter. But then the psalm closes with verses 12 through 15, which speak about the blessed nature of those who God saves. And notice all the different ways in which they're blessed. They're blessed to their sons, to their daughters, the storehouses, the flocks, the cattle, the walls. All of these things are blessed when God is the one who is moving and working. Happy are the people with such blessings. Happy are the people whose God is Yahweh. Happy are the people who have a relationship with Yahweh, who submit and worship and bow down and humble themselves before Yahweh as God. That's really what it all comes down to. That's the crux of the issue. Will someone bow down and worship Yahweh and throw themselves completely at His mercy? If you will do that, and if you will respond to His mercy with praise, with greater devotion, with greater trust, with greater confidence, then that person will live a blessed life. Not saying everything's going to go perfectly, but what a blessing to know that Yahweh is your God, the God who can do anything, the God who will be your rock, your fortress, your stronghold, your deliverer, your shield, someone in whom you could take refuge, someone who would think about you even though you are nothing, even though I am nothing. God still thinks of me, and He listens to my prayer, He listens to my requests, and He answers those according to His wisdom and to His glory. What a blessed person is. What a blessed a person, how blessed, there we go, how blessed a person is when they are able to say that Yahweh is their God. That was David's thoughts here, or those are David's thoughts here in Psalm 144, this royal psalm, his kingly prayer, and may it be our prayer as well. May we recognize what God will do for us so long as we trust Him and submit to Him, so long as we will throw ourselves at His mercy, recognizing we are nothing and that He is everything. What a blessed life that will be to know that Yahweh is our God as well. If you have any questions or comments about Psalm 144, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. Hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday until we get to be together here tonight at 7 o'clock for our next special study in our Wednesday special study series. I'll be talking tonight about the fierce wrath of God, really building upon Austin's great lesson last week about his goodness and compassion, forgiveness. Well, how can that work together? Talking about God's wrath, we'll speak to that tonight, and I hope would be a blessing to each and every one of you. And of course, we'll be back reading again on Friday from Psalm 145, the last Psalm of David here within the Psalter. It is a hymn of David praising God's greatness. Looking forward to reading that with you then and studying with everybody tonight. Take care and God bless.